long time ago, thought that if we ever did kick off this more online thing, I would actually like to start sitting down with some of you individually and doing a brief interview about what brought you to this movement. Well, but the reality is we are still a pretty young movement. We don't have hundreds of years. You know, we are literally still breeding the first generation to be born and raised into the Messianic movement. Well, no, but I'm saying our daughters as well. So, for people that are just now figuring out that the Messianic movement is a thing and they're just starting to dip their toe in it, being able to watch videos of other people that have come from various backgrounds that explain their journey, how they got here. I think that could be useful.
You mentioned that it's new. It's like it's the newest, oldest thing out there. It's 2,500 years old, actually.
We've just reintroduced the steam engine. I got it, but
there you go.
In the future, we may actually ask some of you, hey, would you mind coming over and just having a conversation? Because one thing I want more than anything is I have always wanted this ministry to be authentic. And there's nothing more authentic than allowing the people in it to make those connections. You know, I don't want to shine up the right side of this Cadillac so that it sells. You know, I want this to be a much more authentic thing. Plus, I couldn't keep up that persona anyway. I can't go a week without saying something that I look at God and say, I'm really sorry when you omit that from the memory.
All right. So, yes, sir.
I'm very encouraged by the word of God. He has been doing the newest, oldest thing since the beginning of time.
Amen. All right. So once again, thank you for your patience and your input and your wisdom and prayers as we kind of continue on the path together. So, permanent ride buddies, right?
Permanent ride buddies.
All right. If I may have you stand, please, for the Shema. And it's okay if you want to turn around and face that way. I realize things are a little weird. Yes. Okay. All right. Hey. All right. Shema Israel, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh Ekev, Baruch Shem Kehod, Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. ואהבת את יהוה אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מסך היום על לבביך ושינתם לבניך ודיר בדבם בשבתך בביתך ובביתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך ובשעתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Hear, Israel, Yahweh is our Elohim, Yahweh is one. Blessed is the name of his glorious kingdom for all eternity. And you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And have these words which I command you this day be upon your heart. And you shall teach them diligently to your children, and speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you retire, and when you arise. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and let them be frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. And you should love your neighbor as yourself. Amen. Thank you so much. You may be seated. And I'll turn things over to Rabbi Norman for his Parsha commentary on Ekev, which is one of my favorite Parshas. So enjoy.
Shema Shalom. I had a conversation with a man. The best way to win an argument is to force your opponent to make your argument for you. If you can get someone to punch themselves in the face enough, you win. This man was a dyed-in-the-wool, anti-Torah, that's all nailed to the cross. Glory to Jesus. The guy. And he was being rather verbose. Now, luckily for him, actually luckily for me, he didn't know who I was. So I asked, as he's been going on, I said, you seem like you know a lot about the Bible. Why is God so wishy-washy? What do you mean? I said, well, he's always changing his mind. He never changes his mind. Oh, come on, really? I mean, God changes his mind all the time. He can't figure out what he wants, right hand or left hand. Oh boy, did I set that up. Woo-wee! Did he take that line and run? The Lord changeth not. Oh, do tell. I let that man go on for 20 minutes in front of God and everybody about how the Lord does not change. The Lord is consistent. The Lord this, the Lord that. Egging him the whole time to make his point. And when I finally got him and everybody else who is trying to back up his point, to show this obvious non-believer the error in his ways and that God does not change, I went, really? Allow me to ask you a question. When the Lord talks about his law, when he talks about his Torah, when he talks that it is good, when he talks about the fact that his people perish for the lack of knowledge, and that the donkey knows his master, but his people do not understand. When he talks about the veracity of his Torah and that it will never end. When Yeshua talks about the fact that these things still matter. When God says all of this, did he ever change? Because you have just spent 20 minutes convincing me God does not change and he's consistent. Boy, I'll tell you what. That man's butt puckered so tight, if you had a block of coal, he'd give you a dime back. It was at that moment that he realized that I had an agenda. The reality is this: we all want to be good believers. And please understand, since this is our first time going out to the YouTubes and I probably just tipped a bunch of people off, congratulations, you just met me. I am offensive, not on purpose. It's a gift. I actually do love everybody. The reality is I want everybody to serve God, and I want everybody to feel that relationship. And I firmly believe that most believers, whether they be Orthodox Jewish, Messianic, or Christian, I thoroughly believe that most people truly, deeply want to honor God and have that close personal relationship. I don't think that most people want to thumb their nose at God. So, for my more Orthodox Jewish brothers who are Torah observant but they don't have Mashiach, I recognize your faith and I recognize how much you put into it, and I recognize that even when you go ultra-Orthodox and you go super conservative with Talmud, I understand the heart behind that. I would just like to get you to see that God has made a mechanism through Mashiach's blood. And on the Christian side, I understand. I can see the zeal. I'm not trying to tell you you're doing it wrong. I'm just trying to possibly give you an extra avenue to do it more better. Because all of us, no matter which section we're coming from, I think we can all agree that God is sovereign and that he deserves our faith and our trust, and that we all want to serve him. I think we can all agree with that. And on the back side, I think we can all agree that it would be really awesome if we could be blessed for that. As the dedication hits the oscillating rotator, we would really like to know that we're going to be in the group that comes under the wing of God's protection. And that's not mercenary to say. Okay? The next time a hurricane comes and there is no force on this earth that can stop it, you would like to know that God's like, don't worry, buddy, I got you. And by the grace of Hashem, he always has. that is kind of a background to today. We're going to be, first of all, this is Parasha 46, Ekev. And we're going to start with Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 12 through 15. I love this section because it describes the relationship I want to have. Excuse me. It describes the things that I want my faith to be, and it describes what I would like to get from God. So we're going to start by reading. It says, because you are listening to these rulings, keeping and obeying them, Yahweh your Elohim will keep with you the covenant of mercy that he swore to your ancestors. This includes, he will love you, bless you, and increase your numbers. Okay. He will also bless the fruit of your body and the fruit of your ground. All right. Your grain, wine, olive oil, and the young of your cattle and sheep. In the land that he swore to your ancestors that he would give you. You will be blessed more than all other people. There will not be a sterile male or female among you, and the same with your livestock. Moreover, Yahweh will remove all illness from you. He will not afflict you with any of Egypt's dreadful diseases. By the way, did you hear the bubonic plague is making a resurgence? Talk about the classics. No, in America. Seriously. And interestingly enough, right along the headline that talked about the bubonic plague making a resurgence and starting to show up in America, I read that there are record numbers of rats running around New York City right now. Do you know what primarily spreads the bubonic plague? That would be rats. I'm going to be honest. I can't see enough into the future to get the winning the lottery card. But I can see that if the bubonic plague is making a resurgence in the rat population, and there are more rats in New York than there have been since the 70s. This is a recipe for destruction. So this part about he will not afflict you with any of Egypt's dreadful diseases which you have known, instead he will lay those on those that hate you. I take all of this seriously. Now, being a believer, I look at this and I say, Yahweh is telling his people that we will be blessed. As a person who likes to think that I'm one of his people, I can look at this and go, these would be my blessings. That he will love me, bless me, and increase my numbers. Well, in this case now it means grandchildren. He will bless the fruit of my body, the fruit of my ground, my wine, olives, my young cattle. In this case, I don't have a farm, but I do have a pool company. And I do like to be blessed. There will not be a sterile male or female among us. Not the same with our livestock, and he will remove all illness. These are all things that I think any of us in the body of believers would look at and say, that all sounds good. Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, all right, I'll shut this one off there. Would any of us here disagree and say, I don't want those things? Be honest. This is all about you. I mean, for me, it's all about me, but when you guys read this section, this is all about you. Do these sound like things that you would want? If God were like, hey, I can take away disease and you won't suffer like the rest of the pagans, would you go, I'll take it? If that's the case, then you have to ask yourself, what is the cost of that? Why does God say he's going to do these things? What does he expect in return? And by the way, if you're one of those people that says, well, that's blasphemy, God doesn't expect anything in return. This is a relationship. A relationship. And anytime you've ever seen a one-sided relationship where one party gives everything and the other party expects to receive everything, and the receiver never, ever expects to give back, and the one giving never receives. Have you looked at that relationship and gone, man, that is a healthy relationship? Have you ever looked at a relationship, a one-sided, truly one-sided relationship, and thought, that is how all relationships should go? Then you have to understand that expecting God to give everything, while you basically give nothing but some lip service, It's a bad relationship. And that's what many believers do. They expect to receive all of the benefits, all of the blessings, and the only thing they might ever do is publicly thank God. You know, Lord, you've given everything to me, and you haven't asked anything in return, and I want to thank you. But that's not healthy. That's taking advantage of. And do you think that God is just a schmuck that is supposed to put up with that? Do you think that it is unfair that he ever would ask for something in return? No. So the answer to the question of why would God offer these things and what do we have to do to guarantee them, what is our part of the bargain? Well, the first sentence says it. Because you are listening to these rulings, keeping them and obeying them. That's what God expects. It's what he's asking for. Now there are those that come out and say, well, sounds a whole lot like you're earning your blessings. Is that what we're doing? Sounds a lot like you're working towards something, like you're earning it. So we're going to look into this a little bit. First of all, because you are listening to these rulings, keeping and obeying them, let's look into what some of these words actually mean in the original Hebrew. Because is Ekev, and it literally means the result of compensation on account of a reward. So it literally implies compensation and reward. Listening, Shema, Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh Echad. Shema, to hear, to consent, to consider, to understand, to be obedient to, and to obey. The problem with the word hear is this. You can hear a lot of things, but it doesn't mean you consent to, understand, or obedient to, or obey. I can hear the police officer tell me that driving over 100 miles an hour in my sports car will put me in jail. But if I do not consider, consent, understand, be obedient to, and obey, I am still going to reap the rewards of breaking that law. So hearing is not enough. Rulings, mishpat. Now this has been referred to as the laws, the statutes. But it means an ordinance, an order, but also a right or a privilege. And this is part of the problem. Human beings are rebellious. Children are the perfect example. I love when people that have never had kids come up and tell me how purely innocent children are, and I go, have you met one? I just want to go, children, they're taught evil. They're born good. And I went, really? Riddle me this, Batman. Have you ever seen a parent teach a child to lie? And the answer to that is yes. I've known some really horrible parents. But children come out of the gate able to lie. It's one of the first things children learn. Don't touch the cookie. One to touch the cookie. Cookie gone. Did you touch the cookie? No. It didn't take them long to figure out that they don't want to be punished, and admitting to doing the thing they were not supposed to do is going to get them punished. Even the purest, most lovely child figures out pretty quickly that shaking their head no might get them off. They might get it out of jail. We teach our children. On another case, I have seen children, wonderful young children, beat the crap out of each other for one toy that the second child didn't even know he wanted until the first child picked it up. This doesn't mean children are evil. I love them, but children are coming out of the gate like this. We train our children to be better people. As human beings, we are rebellious. And that's part of the problem with the way we look at the Torah. We look at it like it is a limiting thing. Like God's telling us what we have to do, and we don't like that. But I love this section because one of the definitions of mishpat, one of the meanings of the Hebrew word is a right or a privilege. Yes, you can put your hand up.
When we teach us the fact that is control. So anyway, it's manual, so you don't know it's so you can still get one, an actual form.
Yep, that is true. Yep, that is true. The only thing you have to do to be rebellious is go against the status quo. If the status quo right now is evil, then you get to be a rebel. I try to get people to see that viewing the Torah as a right and a privilege matters, because this is God's covenant. It's the constitution of his nation. And it is a privilege that we are allowed to become part of that. It is a privilege that God has put the ball in our court, that we have the right to pick up this book, become educated, and follow these. He does not say this is only for you and nobody else can do it. In fact, he invites the foreigner in as well. So if you're a Goyim, born of Goyim, of a line of Goyim, and you don't know what Passover is, you've never heard of Sukkot, you still have the right to educate yourself and then the privilege of doing this. And it is a right and a privilege. Kipping, shamar, means to guard, to protect, to attend to take heed, to observe, to preserve. Finally, obey, asa, to do, to commit, to follow, to fulfill, to labor, to observe, to be occupied with, to practice, and to work. According to this, we will in fact be compensated for and rewarded if we obediently work and labor to observe Yahweh's ordinances. That is actually what this section says. It in fact tells you that if you labor to do this, you will be compensated and rewarded. Now, I realize that any of you in the Christian community that has just heard me say that, you all went, ah! But I ask you, is that evil? Is that an evil concept? Does the idea of working towards something to derive the reward, is that an inherently satanic notion? I'm not telling you to do what you will should be the whole of the law. In fact, I'm telling you, don't do what you will, listen to the law. Now, invariably, when I have this conversation, it's normally followed by, but Jesus did away with the law. And it doesn't take much effort at all to dissuade that. And then I'll get to, but that's not what Paul taught. Paul told us that it's been done away with. We're told that Paul taught us that we can't earn our salvation through works, that it must come from faith and grace alone. I have literally written series on Paul. And the one thing I can tell most people is that you don't know Paul. He is one of the most difficult authors to understand. He is the most misquoted author ever. When I finally go up to the kingdom, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to walk up, I'm going to buy Paul a bear, and I'm going to punch him in the mouth. Because he has made all of our jobs so difficult, because Paul assumed that the people reading his letters would have some education. And as Peter says, Paul is misquoted and misunderstood by the uneducated. That they will interpret Paul to their own destruction. Even Peter was like, Paul, I love you, brother. You did a crap job at this. They cannot understand you. And Paul's like, no, they need an education. Okay? One of my favorite things about, one of my favorite rabbis is Maimonides. He wrote the Gods of the Perplexed. The best thing about the Gods of the Perplexed is as you're reading it, if you come across a section that you don't understand, literally Maimonides says, if you lack the education to read this section and understand it, I urge you to put the book down, go get a proper education, come back, pick up the book and read it. And Paul assumed that the people reading his letters would have that education, because Paul didn't write letters to people, he wrote letters to communities. In Paul's communities, understand, he had leaders that he had faith in that were to receive the letter, hand out the various parts to the right people, read it for them, and interpret it for them. Paul assumed that the person who had an idea of what Paul was talking about was going to explain it. The problem is that's not the case when Paul's letters are contained here. Paul is misunderstood and misquoted very often, but he does bring up a valid point. How does this concept of earning a reward through effort, how does that work with the New Testament concept of faith and grace? Because seemingly they're incompatible. Seemingly faith and grace means you can't really earn anything, and this idea of needing to earn something seems to fly in the face of faith and grace. So we're going to have to look at that. How do we reconcile Torah and the New Testament, the renewed covenant? How do we reconcile this with the concept of grace shown by Paul? Well, first we're going to go back to Deuteronomy chapter 10. And starting in verse 12, it says, "So now, Israel, all that Yahweh your Elohim asks from you is to fear Yahweh your Elohim, follow all his ways, love him, and serve Yahweh Elohim with all of your heart, all of your being, to obey for your own good the mitzvot and regulations of Yahweh which I am giving you today." That is what he is asking you to do. To fear him. Yareh, it means to fear, to frighten, to be afraid, to dread, to have reverence. This is one of the hardest sections for people because they say, well, there's a loving God, why should I be afraid of him? And that's running under the assumption that fear is a negative emotion that is brought about through negativity. That you fear something evil and bad. But let's look at the word revere. Men understand this concept probably more than women. A man cannot truly, fully respect any other man that he doesn't fear a little bit. Part of the reason that in a room of men we do not insult another man's wife is that we know we're probably going to get punched for it. It's true. Now, it doesn't imply that the puncher is an evil person. It just implies that there is the potential for things to go bad if we misbehave. Respect in a man's world, the reason we respected our fathers is we knew that when our father decided, the belt would come off, and there it was. The reason God has made it that your name can be Bruce Lee, and you cannot beat your father in a fight. I don't know why, but God designed it that way. Fear here is not a negative emotion because it is tied in with respect and reverence. I have had the honor and the grace, and I truly mean that, of having to stand in a court of law before a judge, knowing fully well that there's a real chance that I am probably going to have a vacation that I don't have to pay for. The reason I say that this is a good thing is because it taught me a few things. One of those things is that that judge, because of his position of power, needs respect, and that respect came with a sense of fear and a dreading. But what it meant was that when that judge opened his mouth, I shut mine. And when he said stand up, I stood up. When he said sit down, I sat down. I fully understood that his power and authority deserved and frankly necessitated that kind of respect. And if we can afford that to a police officer, to a judge, to a king, to a senator, how much more so our Heavenly Father? So when you hear about this, that God asks us to fear him, trust me, if God wanted to scare the bejesus out of you, he's got that power. We live in the lightning capital in the United States of America, and I've had some lightning strike close enough that I have been terrified. If God wanted to scare me, he could scare me. We're not talking about that kind of fear. We're talking about that reverence of you are my sovereign king, you are the ultimate authority and power in the universe. Take that, Death Star. And I will show the appropriate amount of reverence and fear. That kind of fear. He wants us to follow him. Follow, halach. It means to walk in, to behave, to be conversant, to exercise, follow, grow, and spread. It's not just enough to listen to God. He wants us to be conversant in it. He wants us to grow and spread. He wants us to be excited. Have you ever gone to a new restaurant and had the best time ever? Didn't you run out and tell everybody else? Have you ever had a new lawn guy that didn't cut down your hibiscus with a weed whacker? And you went, Baruch Hashem, it's not a weed. We've actually had guys cut down all the flowers and literally leave the weeds. I thought you wanted those. Don't you go out and spread that good news? When something good happens, when something that enriches your life comes into your life, you want to tell everybody. And God's like, hey, grow, spread, be conversant in. Obey, again, shamar, guard, protect, observe, preserve. All of these describe what Yahweh wants our actions to be. This is what God asks from us. But how does this compare with Paul's definition of faith? Faith in Greek is pistis, and it means persuasion, moral conviction, assurance, belief, fidelity. Fidelity is defined in Webster's Dictionary as faithfulness, a careful and exact observance of duty or performance of obligation. The definition of faith in Greek does not do away with this idea of an obligation. Know how the devil makes work right on him? Well, quite frankly, you're on to something there. Christianity has had a problem for a while with losing people to Islam. And I had somebody ask me about that. And I said, you must understand, people don't like to be bored. And we don't trust anything too easily given to us. We don't put any value in something that doesn't cost you anything. If somebody gave you a Rolex for free and was going down the street giving everyone Rolexes for free, pretty soon you look at the Rolex and go, well, this must not be worth much, and you pawn it for a nickel. So many people find their faith unfulfilling because it requires nothing. It was freely given to them and they're told that they don't have to do anything for it. So it has no value. Islam means submit. And that is what a lot of people are looking for. They're literally looking for that structure. They're looking for a faith that requires something of them. Frankly, the problem is that they're having to go to Islam to find this when God has already given us the structure. Deuteronomy 10:14 says, see the sky, the heaven beyond the sky, the earth and everything on it, they all belong to Yahweh your Elohim. You see, The sky, the heavens, everything, all of this belongs to God. He has all of it. Only Yahweh took enough pleasure in your ancestors to love them and choose their descendants after them, yourselves, above all peoples, as he still does today. Where the previous section focused on our obligations to Yahweh, this section focuses on his grace and how he has shown it to his people. Now again, we'll look at Paul's concept of grace. Grace in Greek is charis, and it means graciousness of manner or act, especially the divine influence upon the heart. And it means acceptable, of benefit, favor, gift. And it comes from the Hebrew word chanan, which means properly to bend or stoop in kindness to an inferior, to favor, to bestow, to implore, to beseech, to show graciousness, to have mercy upon, have pity upon. Yahweh choosing Abraham and his descendants and leading them out of Egypt was an act of unwarranted grace. He chose the Israelites out of grace, and through faith they observed his mitzvah. The problem with grace and faith is this. It's describing the two halves of the relationship. Grace is what God shows us. Faith is what we give back. Grace and faith are not both given from God. In this relationship, there are things that God provides for us. We talked about many of them, but I'll go further and say that Yeshua's sacrifice is one of those things. It is an act of grace. Anytime God provides something for us that we cannot provide for ourselves is an act of grace. Anytime he looks out for us, anytime he clears the path, anytime he protects us, anytime he guides us, all of these are acts of grace. They come from God. All of that is grace, and the Bible's full of it. The Old Testament's full of it. That is what he is doing for us. Faith describes our actions for God. What are we doing? And we say, well, we're showing faith. But what does that look like? The reality is that what God is asking for, this observance of his mitzvah, is not working for anything. It is how he describes what he wants us to do for him. We see this play out in almost any relationship. As an employer, I write paychecks. It is an act of grace that you get one from me. If you've ever worked for me, you know that there are people that it is truly an act of grace that I gave you a paycheck. But I do expect something in return. I expect you to show up. I expect you to do your job. But very often, I define what that job looks like. I define what it is I want from you so that I give you this. I give you a paycheck, I give you benefits, and I define what it is I would like to see in return. You don't get to show up and just do something and say, there you go, man, I punched in. I'm like, you punched in and played on your phone for 5 hours. I wanted you to do this. That is how a relationship works. So we have to ask, what is it that God expects his Torah to do? Why does he insist on this particular set of rules? Why does he insist that we pay attention to his ordinances? Why that? Why isn't whatever you feel like doing good enough for God? What is it that these ordinances are supposed to do? Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 5. Think deeply about this. I love when the Bible actually says these words because he's talking to me. I'm reading along and I'm just kind of droning along, doing my thing, sipping my coffee, smoking my pipe, and all of a sudden God's like, hey, idiot, think deeply about this. Oh, okay. Yahweh was disciplining you, just as a man disciplines his child. That is the crux of it right there. We are rebellious creatures who hate rules. Many of us rebelled against our own parents. We don't like being told what to do. And that's exactly what God's doing. God is disciplining you just as a man disciplines a child. So obey the mitzvot of Yahweh Elohim, living as he directs and fearing him. Disciplining here is yasar. It means to chastise, to correct, to instruct, to punish, reform, and teach. God often presents himself as a parent and us as a child. And that really works. Because most of us have been parents. We have raised one of these little, beautiful, headstrong things. We know what it means to take this child and try to form them into a being that you can take to the store without the police being called. We've lived this. We have seen the times that our children listened to us, did what we said, and we were invited back over to the Smiths for the next barbecue. We have also been in the store when you hear all heck break loose in the toy aisle and turn around and realize that someone has released a demon upon the candy section and they have no chance of bringing that demon in. We recognize that young, forming humans need to be educated, reformed, taught. We realize that there have to be rules, and that those rules must not only be taught but enforced. We recognize this, and that is how you make an actual human being. That is how you make a person that is a gift to society and not a detriment. We've all seen that. Many of us have done that ourselves. And you have to recognize that God is trying to do that with us. The right and privilege of knowing his instructions is the right and privilege of knowing that God is trying to instruct you in how to not be the demonic cretin that is destroying the toy aisle. He is trying to turn you into a human being that can, in fact, interact in society. The reality of this, and I'm going to say this, and for those of you who are hearing me for the first time, allow me to say, if you are anti-Torah, that entire belief system is born out of ignorance. I didn't say stupidity, you're probably very smart, but you are uneducated. Only a truly uneducated person would ever dare say that God's law has been done away with. If you have read it at all, you cannot possibly come to the conclusion that God wants to do away with it. The only way that you think it is something that needed to be done away with, that Jesus would have died to free you from it, is that you have not read it, you don't know it, no one's ever educated you, you've listened to the 4 people who own stock in a bacon factory. If anyone has ever read what these mitzvot that God himself keeps saying what your people are, if any of you have ever read it, you recognize that any society that kept these rules would be wonderful. Amazing. If for the past 2,000 years the Western European empire of Christianity had been truly Torah observant, we would be living in a generation that doesn't know what a lock is. Seriously. You have a key? What's a key? Key opens a lock. What's a lock? A lock keeps the door from opening. Doesn't the latch keep the door from opening? Yes, but other people can still open it, which would be the way you get into a door. Well, a lock keeps you from being able to open the door. Why would you do that? So other people can't break in. Break in and steal your stuff. Steal? Imagine that. Imagine never needing a lawyer, because your yes is a simple yes and your no is a simple no, and people do what they make their vows to do. Imagine never needing a Better Business Bureau because no one would ever use weights and measures that aren't fair. Imagine knowing that anytime you walk out on a balcony, there was going to be a guardrail because God says, put guardrails up, you idiot. You don't want people falling to the net. Imagine if you knew you could go walking down the street because if someone owned a certain dog breed that will not be mentioned today that seems to fight the crap out of everybody, and I'm talking to you, Redneck Bob. Imagine if everybody paid attention to the law that says if you have an animal prone to goring, you must muzzle it so it can't harm everybody. Wouldn't it be amazing if there was a divine law that said you can't be mauled to death by your neighbor's pit bull because it's my dog-given right to own a dog that kills people? All of these things are commanded in the Torah. It's not all just about pork and bacon. It is about how a society deals with its internal needs. To buy, to sell, to employ, to be employed, interpersonal, intersexual. How does God see what at this time was 3 to 6 million people? This is the first time you ever realized that the Hebrews walking through the desert weren't like 1,000 hippies with sheep. Allow me to say that it was 3 to 6 million people. This wasn't given to a small group of people to be nice to each other. Pick flowers and sing kumbaya. This was a nation that was being born, and this is the constitution of the nation. This was how God said, if you have mold growing, this is how you deal with it. If you have communicable diseases, this is how you deal with them. If you have meat, this is how you don't die from it. If you have interpersonal relationships, this is how they are respectful, and this is how they are detrimental. If you're going to buy, sell, everything. The Torah was given not just to command how you eat your food, it was commanded on how we function as a society. And I would argue if you've never read this document, get off your lazy butt, open the first half of the book and read the document. You might still disagree with me, but at least you won't be an uneducated person spouting crap that you don't know about. Well, God did away with it. And I went, really? Which part did he do away with? All of it? Oh, good, because I wanted to have sex with a dog this afternoon, and God says it's a sin, but apparently you say it's okay. And they look at me, and I'm like, yes, that's the point. You don't know what you're claiming God did away with. God did not create the Torah to be a bully and beat up on you, to take away your freedoms and make you feel oppressed. And frankly, if that's what you think God did, then why the heck are you even part of this movement anyway? Why do you even have a book that talks about this deity if you think he was such a bad deity that he made this oppressive load of rules that his own son had to die to free you from? If that's what you think the God of the Bible is, go be an atheist. The reality is that this is a right and a privilege that was given to correct and instruct and teach us. And that if all of us educated ourselves and just did these things, our society as a whole would be a wonderful place. Wonderful. I can honestly tell you, I barely graduated high school. I literally graduated because I had a teacher. I had a couple of classes I wasn't doing exceptionally well for, which is not a surprise. I barely showed up for classes. And I was only a few credits away from not graduating. And I had a teacher literally tell me that she knew I needed her credit, and she literally said, "You're too charming to fail. I cannot know that I'm the reason you won't graduate." I would argue now that I was the reason I wasn't going to graduate. I literally graduated because a female teacher thought I was too charming to not. Not a great endorsement. College, didn't even go near one. I went to a few colleges. Not like for classes, but girls were there, so, that seemed fun. I barely graduated, never went to college, spent most of my 20s going from concert to concert, doing God knows what with God knows who for God knows what reason. The only thing that got me out of all of that was I met a woman that made me want something more than the drugs I was taking. And when I came down to Florida, back down, I lost all of my friends. The internet wasn't really a thing. I didn't have TV. I was bored with nothing to do, and she had given me a Bible. Literally, I have nothing to do but open the Bible and read it. I've only made a few good decisions in my entire life. Golly, were they good decisions. I gave up what I was doing for the woman God gave me. I opened a book, read it, and then said, I can do that. The only education I have is what's in this book. And now, I'm seen as kind of like a success. Through no education, merely because I do what this book says and God has rewarded me. Any of you that know me know that I am not necessarily the best person you've ever talked to. I don't mind throwing fists. I drive way too fast. Let me talk long enough and I'm about to say something probably pretty offensive. I like expensive whiskeys. And I spend most of my life wearing shorts and sandals. My only claim to fame is that I read God's document, believed what he said, and just did that. That's literally the only thing that I have going for me is I cheated. I read the rule book. And I'm here to tell you, and I swear to all of you, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. If I can do this, anybody can do this. I am not special. If I am capable of being that guy, God didn't set that bar super high. He didn't make it too difficult. He himself says, I did not put it across the sea so that you should say, who will sail across the ocean and bring it back to us? I did not put it in the sky so you would say, who should go up into the heavens and bring it down to us? Instead, I made it near to you. You can do it. The amazing thing is that I truly understand the grace of God because I've read the book. And I know how easy he made it. And I know that he promises that if I do these things, I'll be a success. And I'm actually that guy. I am literally Forrest Gump. I showed up and did what I was told. I'm not selling you something I haven't bought myself. I'm not selling you a product I haven't used myself. I have pearly white teeth because I used the toothpaste. My faith matters in my life because it has been a relationship. And everything God has ever asked of me, when I've done it, he has done his part back. That's what this part is talking about. Our Heavenly Father rewarding us if we obey him. We will in fact be compensated and rewarded if we obediently work and labor to observe his ordinances. And is that blasphemy? No. Any parent understands that relationship. Any employer understands that relationship. Now, does that mean that grace has nothing to do with it? No. I know that it is an act of grace. It is through the grace of Yeshua's sacrifice that I come under the kapor, the covering of his blood, so that when I do fall short or am short, he picks up that for me. I understand that it is an act of grace that God has even given me the ability to approach him or have a relationship. I understand that everything that God does for me is an act of grace because he's got an entire universe to keep him occupied, and he still takes my phone calls. That's grace. My obedience in no way justifies the amount of grace he has shown me. He is a man that has given me a 4-course gourmet meal and asked me to pitch in for the tip. Grace is what God does for us. Faith is what we do in return. Because we're listening to these rulings, keeping and obeying them, Yahweh your Elohim will keep with you the covenant and mercy that he swore to your ancestors. And it is a right and a privilege to be able to read those words, internalize them, and put your faith in them. This document represents freedom. If you have ever felt that your faith was hollow, if it wasn't fulfilling, if you just weren't sure it was enough, and I'm talking to the internal you, not the you that you have to talk to everybody else about. I'm not saying you all have to sit around in a group and, my name is Nolan, I've been a sinner. How many days have you not been a sinner, Lord? Working on that. What I'm saying is, in your internal dialogue, ask yourself the real questions. If you still feel the need to go to every altar call, if you still feel the need every day to kind of look at yourself and realize you kind of feel like your faith's a little hollow, if you still wonder if you're doing it right, I believe in Jesus, I've put my faith in there, I've come under the blood, I've been to like every altar call, I've been dunked enough times that I now have gills. If you still wonder if you're doing it right, then I want you to pick up this book and read it. And what you will find is the more you educate yourself, and the more you apply these, do what God has said, allow him to discipline you, the more full your faith is going to get, the more full you're going to feel. The reality is that God doesn't need you to keep the Torah. He doesn't get bigger every time you keep one of the laws. He doesn't get smaller every time you break one. This isn't about making God more powerful. This is about you. If you have ever found yourself wondering how you got where you were, because a year ago you went on an altar call, got baptized and fell on fire for the Lord, and now a year and a half later you're back to doing what you always did, and you wonder, how did I lose that faith? Then allow me to say, this book is the path you're on. Every time you don't get bacon on your cheeseburger, there's a physical manifestation of your walk with God. You may not always be able to see the heavens through the clouds, but you will always be able to see your feet on the path. Every time you pay the people that work for you appropriately, every time you don't overcharge for something and you follow rules, you're on the path. Every time you consult this and apply it to your life, it is a physical manifestation. It is a way of knowing that you're on the path, that you're doing what God asks, that you're holding up your part of the Bible. And all of a sudden you can stop worrying about, is my faith good enough? Because your faith is exactly what your Father asked you for. That's why this is a right and a privilege. It is your right to read it and apply it yourself, and it is a privilege to do so. I can honestly tell you that my life truly turned around when I read this book and did these things. Every blessing that has come in my life is because God did what he said he would do. And all I did was what he asked. That is a free gift if ever I've heard of it. And that is an act of grace. So if you are not Torah observant, then I would say, find out why. If you truly think that Jesus came to save you from something, then take a little bit of time to read and study what it is he saved you from. And then ask yourself the question, why would a righteous Savior choose to save you from this? If you truly think that the world would be a better place if God's law never existed, you're gonna have to ask yourself, what is it in that law that you need to think about? And if you truly, honestly read the document, I think you'll find that no sane person can ever think that. If there's anything that I want my ministry to be about, it is about showing that the law is in fact free. It is liberating, it is fulfilling, and it is the best way to honor your family. If you think that disobeying is the only way to show you love them, you're probably a kid who had a tough childhood. And that's the part about spreading this. That is the part about growing, spreading, being conversant. For those of you sitting in this room, you know better. But your job is to be conversant enough that when somebody else who doesn't know better opens their mouth and says something that you know to be foolish, you handle it better than I do, and you just talk about it. When someone says, God did away with the law, say, which part? Grow and spread this. I'm sure I had an ending. Let me see if it makes any sense. Here we go. As messianic believers, we know that we have been justified and reconciled to our Father through the sacrifice of Yeshua HaMashiach, an act of grace, and by faith we perform our obligations to Yahweh through His Torah. This is how we show that we love, revere, and serve Him. And it's not difficult. I promise you it's not. It is not too hard for you. God promises that. You can do it. I believe in you. He believes in you. All you have to do is make the decision to try. And the first decision is read the document for yourself. You do that, you're immediately in a better position. And if you start to follow these things, it will be amazing to you how much your life comes around, how much more your faith matters to you. And eventually you'll find that far from feeling bad that you couldn't get the pepperoni pizza, all of a sudden it becomes a marker. I rarely anymore miss any of those things, but on a rare occasion that it comes up and I'm like, wow, you know what I really like an Italian sausage? I'm like, well, Baruch Hashem, today I get to sacrifice something for my faith. All right. Yes. Well, we could, it is the only account, we could get into an entire other conversation. Yes?
I don't know if I should say this, but I don't fear God. I'm not one of this opinion. And I fear the Lord Torah, because as far as I can understand, that's kind of like the seed of Babylon. If you want to give your father a gift, thank him for everything he's already done for you. Then you give him what he asked for.
That's true.
So I think, for me at least, it's more gratitude for what I see happens. Maybe I think I see happens.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep.
doing that is our way of not earning anything. It's saying thank you for what we've already received.
And in reality, it's the one thing he's asked for. It's the one thing he's asked for. You know, if you've ever given a gift or received a gift on Father's Day, if there's one thing your father is asking for and it's the one thing you refuse to give him, can you honestly say you respect him? Or even love him? Exactly. if you really wanted the Bee Gees' greatest hits, then you just keep buying them socks. I mean, let's be honest. Alright. As usual, my beginnings are weak, my middles are really strong, and my endings are kind of like, yeah, but I think that middle part really rocked it. Alright, that's all I have for you. Shabbat shalom. Alright, let's get Sarah. Oh yeah, it is an if-then statement. If you do this, I'll do that. If you do that, I'll do this. And it is simple, but it was intended to be simple. Well, if you understand that the one job the disciples couldn't do was take the fight to the Pharisees, they weren't educated. Paul was educated, and that's why he was there. But that means that his arguments were against highly educated men. So they're highly educated arguments. If you lack that education, you know, it means that you're gonna have a hard time. All right.
Okay, who's gonna close this? You. Honey. Alright, closing of the ark, please, page 68, in your scores. Katie. And this is the Torah that Moses placed before the children of Israel, at the command of Yahweh, through Moses' hand. And now, for his blessing, please.
Yisamech Elohim, Yisamech Elohim, Ephraim, and Manasseh, and Yahweh make the simple blessings of Abraham and Manasseh. Ladies? Amy? Run. Yisamech Elohim, Kesarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. May Yahweh make the simple blessings of Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. And the congregation responds, so may it be. Amen.